All right, how you getting on? I'm coming to you live from an APCOA car park, an undisclosed location of an APCOA car park on what has been dubbed the most spiteful podcast tour of 2023, where I tour my podcast and only record live from an APCOA car park until I've recouped every penny. I'm never swearing again, by the way. Every red cent that those cows is APCOA. Well, you're a cow. Why? Because you stole from me €300 because I parked in a place I didn't know I wasn't allowed to park, one, and then the other time was they actually got it wrong and we got the money back, but still wasted my time. The most spiteful podcast tour of 2023, Tony Cantwell Shitshow. I'm Tony Cantwell. How the devil are you? Look, we got a lot to talk about. We got to talk about Will Smith. We got to talk about poor Will Smith. Will Smith, who, as you know, is, not even been cancelled, but been on ice, been resting on ice atop the frozen, broken hearts of his legions of fans, because he's in a place worse than cancelled for me. Jada Pinkett Smith had some new words to say. Mainly that they were not even a couple at the time of the smack. They were not even in a relationship. She was like, I was surprised to hear him call me his wife. That was the most surprising thing of that night. But it is such a shame. It is such a shame that he, whatever. I have to say this. I was saying this to Jordan. I said, of all the things I think Will Smith could have been cancelled for, there's a lot I would have stood by him, and like uncomfortably so with Will Smith. And I'm going to list them off for you now. My 5 things that Will Smith could have been socially cancelled for, that I would have stood by him for, and nowhere on that list was that he would smack another man and then desperately scream from the seat afterwards. As you know, in 2022 at the Oscars, Will Smith, after Chris Rock made some very throwaway, and this is what annoyed me as well, was the comedians running to the defense of like, look, it's a joke. Like, it is such a not even a joke, such a throwaway. She had a shaved head, called her G.I. Jane. Probably had no mention of alopecia. She got a shaved head. You know what I mean? She's there. She's in the front row. He knows her. He knows him. Calls her G.I. Jane. Very dated reference. Anyone who had pre-written that joke would have been like, no, do you know what? They're probably not going to remember that Demi Moore Navy SEAL movie, because they probably don't even know who Demi Moore is, right? So this throwaway, hey, I know someone I know there, and walking up, giving a smack, keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth. And then, of course, Jada Pinkett Smith says, I was surprised to hear him call me his wife. Yeah. Saw on the cover of People magazine, Jada Pinkett Smith has a new book coming out, a tell-all book. You wonder what she was keeping to herself. Like, you wonder what has not already been said around that famous red table that she says everything about, that she spills the beans on everything, But, to say, hey, we're not together, I'm actually dating this young rap star, and I had my husband's approval for it, and then to wheel him out. And I don't think she's a bad person, by the way. I think there may be people who shouldn't be together, maybe. I don't think she's a bad person. I don't like the vilifying of strong women, but when it's one person constantly spilling all the beans, and the other person is kind of in a bit of a wouldn't say career slump, because again, it's not like the bankability of Will Smith has been put on ice along with the frozen hearts of a generation of fans. It's not like his career is on ice. He occupies a place worse than cancelled, which is, I just don't like you anymore. I just don't like him anymore. And you know what? Fresh Prince was on TV, and I'm like, oh my God, oh man, he's so good in this. And I'm like, it doesn't take me long. And I'll tell you what the disappointment is. It's just not even that it was fake, because I don't think anything that he did or any of this kind of any kind of, well, let me take a step back here. I loved Will Smith. I've always loved Will Smith. I loved Fresh Prince. Independence Day was a pivotal blockbuster moment for me and the making of a star, and I watched everything after that. I even believed him to be a bigger star than he was, even though the majority of his films aren't very good. The majority of his choices have been bad. He, didn't want to be Django because he wanted it to be, a love story. He goes and does Emancipation after he's on ice. He didn't want to be Neo because he was scared of the Wachowskis' whole vibe. He was like, whoa, I don't really like this, right? Didn't want to be Neo. He's made a lot of bad decisions, and he's probably made more bad decisions than good, but you're willing to overlook a lot of that. And then he's on this big YouTube buzz. He's on he's making reels, and I'm like, oh, they're good. He's making a YouTube show about where he's trying to write his autobiography and get in shape at the exact same time, which is too many things. And I'm like, oh, I love him. Look at him working hard. I would watch clips of him saying that he would outrun me to my death if we were on side-by-side treadmills, if that would ever happen. And he would say he would literally die before he gave up if he was running against me. Don't know he had to go with me. Don't know why he was having to go with me, And I would listen to these Will Smith motivational speeches. Because every time he opens his mouth, something motivational. So when his book came out, I was like, oh my God, I'm getting like unlimited, essentially, words of wisdom from Will Smith in my ear holes everywhere I'm going. Long book, probably 40 hours in terms of pages, because I don't read books, I listen to audiobooks. But I'm telling you, 40 hours, big book, right? And I'm listening to this, and he says the most pivotal moment of his life was when he saw his mother be smacked around by his dad, and the fear that set in him. And he said he felt like a coward, and he says he still feels like a coward. He says every kind of decision he's made, if there's a fork in the road, he's taken the decision to not appear like a coward, to not be a coward. The most pivotal moment of his life was seeing this violent act. And that, for me, literally, that was like the last thing that I had read in his book. And then the Oscars happens, and he goes up and slaps a much smaller man, much funnier man, much, much more talented man, I'd have to say as well. Will Smith, he's good. But one note with what he does with his acting. Chris Rock, you fucking kidding me? The amount of jokes, the level of jokes, the hilarity of the jokes, the consistency of a career to be able to sell out arenas like that. And he goes smacks him around. So that was very disheartening. I know this isn't very funny, but I want to tell you where I was on the Will Smith train. And these are the things that I would have stood by him for. I don't know why I'm starting a podcast by this. This is the most recent thing in my mind. If I had found that he had done some kind of like, if he had set up a charity and actually ended up like embezzling the money, so maybe that, and like tax fraud, where he had actually he had some Cayman Islands account, some Swiss bank account where he hadn't been paying taxes. I'd have been like, quietly to myself, I still fucking love him. I still think he's great, but I don't really care. That is not enough for me to distance the art from the artist, If I'd heard he was racist against white people, like the old Lauryn Hill, I don't want white people ever watching my movies. I wish I could give back $10 billion of the box office sales of those movies because I don't like white people. I would have still been like, hey, that's all right. I'm not too fond of things white people have done, to be honest. So, I like, a lot of my friends are white. So I like, in terms of a ratio, I like a lot of white people, but I get what you're saying. If he was so kind of like tax fraud, embezzlement, racism, would have stood by him. If I'd heard he smacked his kids around, not around, but like maybe his like first son, if he had hit his like first son Trey, I'd be like, okay, I don't really mind. If he had smacked Jaden around, I'd be like, that's a bit too recent now. He probably shouldn't have been smacking Jaden. Wouldn't have been on board with him hitting his ex-wife Charisse or Jada Pinkett Smith. Wouldn't have been on board for that. His ma, if he'd smacked his mom, no. If he hit his dad, maybe. If he'd smacked his mom, no. But if he had smacked his son Trey, I'd be like, okay, maybe I reckon he did that and has atoned for that, I reckon he's let Trey know that he was, he's very apologetic, and he seems to have done. Could you call it a better job with the other two? I don't know. They seem very proud people. They seem like they're very good at just doing exactly what they want to do, which I suppose is one goal you can have as a parent. So child abuse is one. If I'd heard he'd smacked his son, I wouldn't. I'd be like, and publicly I would have been like, it's a real shame. He smacked his son. But privately, I would have been like, I'll still watch these movies. I might watch them illegally on a stream and not buy the DVD. Or if it happens just to be appearing on, one of the streamers that I frequent, then I'm still okay with that. If I'd found out he was a Scientologist, rumors are that he is a Scientologist. If I'd found out he was a full-blown Scientologist, I still would have been like, okay, right, not, hey, if I'm willing to overlook it for Tom Cruise, I really appreciate him not talking about it that much anymore. That's great for me as a Tom Cruise fan. If I'd found out that he was like any other religion, including one that hated other religions, if he, I don't want to say if he was in the kind of extremist Islam, I don't know. I don't think I'd be into that. I think I wouldn't be into that. If he was calling for the death of infidels, for example, I don't know if I could. It would be a strong choice. I'd be like, bro, I know Michael Mann told you to go deep on, the Understanding Islam for the Ali biopic. I think you've gone a little too far. I might maybe look at some of your collaborators and, maybe you've lost the run of yourself a little bit there. Wouldn't be into that. Okay, so maybe religious extremism, but Scientology, fine. If I'd found out he was a kleptomaniac, like Winona Ryder, would have stood by him. If I heard that he was drunk, a drug addict, any of those things, I would have stood by him. If he did an Alec Baldwin and shot someone accidentally, I would have stood by him. I would assume he'd have a bit more fucking courtesy than Baldwin did about becoming the most vocal person that's ever been on Twitter the weeks after the manslaughter of a camera operator. I would still probably have stood by him, be like, that's an accident. That's a shame that happened to him. If he had shot his mate like Dick Cheney did accidentally out in the woods, I would have stood by him. If he started getting really vocal and anti-Irish in the same way, was it Cardi B? Who was it that really hates Irish people and just lets us fucking have it on Twitter? If he was like that, if he called us a bunch of, spud munching bog fuckers, and he says all the people of Ireland can go fuck a bog and never watch any of my movies, I still would have stood by him. What else? I don't know about a Matthew Broderick kind of murder. I don't know about a kind of Matthew Broderick kind of murder. If he had divorced his wife via fax machine like Phil Collins, my ma would have probably fallen out with him. I probably still would have been okay with him. If he had been cheating, if he'd cheat on Jada Pinkett Smith with a just turned 19-year-old, no, I wouldn't have been into that either. Just turned. I shouldn't be trying to overemphasize that. But if you start dating a young one, if he had an affair, I wasn't too fond of Ewan McGregor leaving his family for your one, Mary Elizabeth Wanstead. Is that her name? From Scott Pilgrim. I mean, she's a gorgeous girl and very talented actor and performer. I would have preferred though he stayed with his kids. Not up to me to make that call. But he wouldn't have been cancelled if he'd had a high profile affair. If he was gay, of course, that wouldn't have bothered me. Now, look, when you're getting to the nitty gritty of it, if you're getting to the Kevin Spacey, not just because he's gay, but if you're getting to the nitty gritty of sexual assault allegations, wouldn't have been too into that, and I would have probably at that point been like, no, do you know what? I can't really. This is not the guy I signed up for. if it was, which is mad that I would probably accept some murder, if he had robbed, if he had made some kind of comment in bad taste, if he had done a kind of, they tried to cancel The Rock there recently because he was asking people to donate to the Maui Fund after him and Oprah were trying to donate for Maui relief. People found that in bad taste because they're worth billions. I would have stood by him if he'd hit my brother. I couldn't. No, I probably couldn't stand by him. If he hit any member of my family, if he hit any of my mates, I would have been like, you probably did something. I can't believe your side of the story, because I wouldn't believe that he would do that. So look, there's a lot there. There's a lot there that I would stand by Will Smith for. And even if you told me in isolation that if Will Smith, because Terry told me the morning I woke up, Will Smith's after smacking Chris Rock at the Oscars. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I'm sure it was just like a blown out proportion. Then you watch it. And then you watch him screaming. And you think it's like, because I've seen him acting and I've seen him look angry, I've never seen him look that angry. I've never seen him, it was the best acting I've ever seen because it was a real emotion. And I hate to use that, who had Will Smith, blah, 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 on your bingo sheet this year, but I was not expecting to ever think that I would fall out of him for that. Like, I love Hollywood icons, right? I love it. I lap that shit up. I love the whole, I don't believe that anyone is better than anyone. Like, I fundamentally don't believe that anyone is better than anyone. But I buy in to Hollywood actors and Hollywood directors and these people being these kind of divine angels on earth, I don't really believe that they are, but I buy into what we're being sold on it, I buy in that it's a special occasion if Brad Pitt goes somewhere. I buy in on that. I like seeing celebrities. I like seeing Hollywood actors. I like this whole, these are the divine. These are God's representatives on earth. Terry doesn't really buy into that shit. She doesn't really like Tom Cruise. She thinks that she knows that fundamentally the origin of all of this energy is not to make the world a better place. It's for everyone to be, to look at the person, Tom Cruise might be making a new Mission Impossible movie, hiring a population of a small country, paying people, allowing people to keep their homes and get better homes, and, this trickle-down economics of him jumping out of a fucking plane, I know that's a byproduct of that, but fundamentally it's him showing up somewhere and everyone loving him. That's the motivation. That's his motivation. And I know that. But when someone is going to step over the line and be like, look, I am up my own hole, I am self-indulgent, I'm going to preach to you all this stuff about positive thinking, positive energy, anti-violence, but I'm still going to get up there and smack someone and scream at them. That's a mask slipping so far that I can never forget the contorted phantom face that lies beneath the mask. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's not that big of a deal. It's no big deal at all. But I suppose if you love someone, I don't know. Like, I still listen to Michael Jackson. Do you know what I mean? Like, I listen to Michael Jackson sometimes, I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm not going to lobby for Michael Jackson. And anyone can tell me that that's despicable behavior, that I would listen to Michael Jackson. But I kind of see it like, here, if there's anyone who's fucked up in this whole Michael Jackson thing, it's his kids. And I'm more than happy for those kids to, get, a 1 zillionth of a cent for me listening to Billie Jean. Do you know what I mean? Am I making any sense here? This has been too long of a ramble. But I found it funny seeing Jada Pinkett on the cover of People magazine saying, finally here to tell her side of the story. Oh, cut to the fucking sad Will Smith meme being, no way. But yeah, R.I.P. Will Smith. I mean, it might. I just don't know. Do you know what? Do you know what's holding out on it? And I love it. It's Chris Rock. Still doesn't like him. He made some very funny jokes. Wish that his special, though, that he made those jokes in wasn't like a live taping, because he fluffed some of his lines, and I would love for that just to look so, in the way Chris Rock does, just so polished and effortless. I would love him just to absolutely tear down Will Smith, which is what he should do. That's what Chris Rock is able to do. It's what Will Smith should have done. He should have tore him down outside. He should have said that was in really bad taste. He could have probably even lobbied some level of support. He probably could have even turned it into some alopecia awareness campaign to benefit people who have alopecia. There was his tools, his actual tools that he uses. Will Smith doesn't get in fucking fights. Might act like he's tough, but he's not tough. Chris Rock did the best improv he could, being like, all right, what's going to happen here? Or he's going to slap me. All right, let's roll with this. Is he joking? Is he joking here? And then he slaps him really hard, and he's like, all right, he's not joking. And then he's a fucking professional. He goes on, gives an Oscar to fucking Questlove, who deserved a for the best documentary I've seen in the last 10 years. The Harlem Music Festival documentary is an incredible documentary. It's on Disney Plus. And Questlove doesn't get to enjoy his Oscar because it directly followed this incident. That's what's forgotten about this. So yeah, I'm rambling too much about this. But look, how are you doing? I don't know why I started talking about that straight away. I suppose it's just been on my mind recently. And if and hey, as one self-indulgent entertainer to another, I knew people might listen to me. So what's going on with you? Sonny did something very funny. I got him this green ninja costume. He's obsessed with ninjas at the moment. And I got him this, went to a Halloween shop. I showed him this green ninja costume, and he was like, what the fuck? Like, he couldn't believe it. Jaw hit the floor. Got him a sword, which was a mistake. I knew. He's waving the sword. He pulls the sword on us whenever he doesn't like something. He carries it everywhere. He has a sword on him. He pulled the sword to my throat when I told him he should go to do a piss. And he was like, no! And held the sword to my throat. I can see him holding it like the sword of Damocles over his sister's head. And he never swings it. He never brings it fully down on her skull. But he wants to so bad. And he holds it above her head. And I can feel the fucking prickle of kinetic energy in the air, knowing how much he wants to fucking bring that sword down on her head. So he goes to bed with this sword. And I was playing with it a little, and to be honest, I fucking get it. I don't know what it is about a sword. Like, he doesn't really know about swords. Like, he doesn't know about feudal combat. He doesn't know about actual samurais. I've told him a little bit, and ninjas, but like, he's not, really seen proper good choreo sword fights like his old man has, He's not played For Honor, that feudal swordplay game. He knows nothing about swords, but he just waves it around. Like, I get it. What is it about it? What is it about just holding a gun and holding a sword? So then he came in to our bedroom and he was saying about giant squids. He was like, I'm afraid of giant squids. And Terry was all like, I was like, look, monsters are, just creatures we haven't met yet. That's what I always tell him, and he knows that. They're creatures we just haven't met yet, and people get scared because they haven't seen them yet. As soon as that creature gets found and gets put into the Encyclopedia Britannica or whatever. Is there an Encyclopedia Irlanda? If there's not, we should make one because I'd much prefer to quote that one. The Encyclopedia Irlanda, Irlandais Douspons, right? As soon as it gets put in there, it's going to kind of dispel all the horror of this beast, this monster, We'll actually have its measurements. We'll know what it does. And then we'll get that nice little bit of, italic writing underneath that says, afraid of humans, more afraid of you than, you should be of it, etc., But he's like, I'm afraid of giant squids. And I was like, well, squids never hurt you. And I was like, and also they live under deep, deep, deep water. They live in heavy water where the water's really heavy on them. So if they come up to the top water where it's really light, they can't really move very well. They need to live in the deep water. So they would never come up even to where we swim, and they would also never be able to go onto land because they can't breathe. And he's holding this sword like as if there's a giant squid going to burst out at any point and he's going to fucking slay it. He's swinging it around, getting really excited about giant squids. And Terry says, and well, you know, they would never hurt humans. And 9 times out of 10, you know, if they saw a human, they would run away. And he's only 3. So I think I already thought this was a too high concept, you know. I'm trying to tell him about heavy war and light war, you know. And Terry's rolling her eyes because I'm not giving him the actual definitions of water pressure, right? But I'm simplifying it for him. And then she goes out with this, oh, well, you know, 9 times out of 10, they wouldn't even hurt a human. And he picks up the sword like he was some anime character, like He-Man. And he holds it up in the air. And she says, yeah, 9 times out of 10, it wouldn't hurt a human. And he holds it up in the air and he goes, what about the 10th time? As if he's fucking ready. 10% chance. The 10%, I don't like those odds. Is there one in the room that I can slay? Is there any, you know, it's got 8 legs. I'm ready to chop off all 8. That absolutely cracked me up. Him holding it up almost like the sword is about to be struck by lightning. And he goes, what about the 10th time? I was like, oh, he does get what you're saying. He does get what you're saying. Also, we have this, we have to be very careful. He was listening to the news today, and they mentioned that Michael D. Higgins is in Italy presenting something, and he started going, hee 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 hee. And I was like, what are you laughing at? And he goes, Michael D. Giggles. Hee 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 hee. And because you remember, my mate Stevie sent these Miggle D. Giggles. They were going to, I think it was Crumlin's Children's Hospital, if you bought one. Some of the proceeds went to Crumlin Children's Hospital. They were little Michael D. Higgins plush toys. You give them a squeeze, and they go, Espralo, Mera. So he's listening to the news about Michael D. Higgins and laughing his ass off. I'm like, he's fucking amazing memory. I think he's great. Look, if you don't know, if you're new to this podcast, I think my son's really great. And, but anyway, we went and got a ninja costume. And he got a green ninja costume, and he was so excited about it. I even let him put it on when we got home. Terry was like, "No, you can't wear that till Halloween." I'm like, "Just give us a lash." Told you, one of the greatest joys you can have in your life is just spending. This was only 20 quid, and I just dressed him up as a little ninja, and he got all serious. He was in the costume, started doing some amazing moves. I have to say, I don't know how he even picked up. He was honestly doing like Shaolin monk moves, you know, with like the legs stretched out the way Shawn Michaels does, you know. And I was like, how does he even know these ninja moves? Like, wow, you know. It was incredible. He's instinctively very good at martial arts, right? And so he dressed up in that, and he was like, "What are you going to dress up as for Halloween?" And I was like, "Well, would you like me to be a ninja?" And he was like, "Yeah, I do. Will you be a ninja? Mammy be a ninja?" And I was like, "Well, I think I'm going to dress up as either a yellow ninja or a blue ninja." And I thought that's going to be fine because green's his favorite color. He's not going to get jealous of these, right? And he's like, "What's up with the yellow ninja? What does the yellow ninja do?" And I said, well, then the yellow ninja's real name is Scorpion. Because I was quoting Mortal Kombat characters. Well, the yellow ninja is Scorpion. And he has a skull head. And he can breathe fire. And he has a grappling hook. And he throws the grappling hook at people and pulls them over to them. And he says, get over here. You know? And I knew then I'd made a huge mistake. He was already so jealous of this idea. And he's like, what? I want to be that ninja. And I'm like, no, you're a green ninja. And he's like, what does the blue ninja do? And I was like, well, the blue ninja is called Sub-Zero, and he can freeze people or freeze little patches of the ground underneath people so they slip and they fall over. And he goes, I want to be the blue ninja. And he was so out on he had his lovely little green ninja costume, and I fucking blimped it by telling him about the, you know, that Scorpion and Sub-Zero exist. But then I said, no, you're going to be Reptile. That's the green ninja. And he's got a reptile head and he spits acid. And he goes, okay. So he's into that now. But I don't know what I'm going to dress up as for Halloween. One of my pieces of advice I gave on this podcast 3 years ago, maybe it was in my list of 33 things you need to know about turning 33, which I'm going to do another 36 of, because I turned 36 in a week's time. So I'm going to do 36, but one of them was write down a list of all of your Halloween costumes. Actually, maybe I already have them. Do I have them? I think I might have written some down. No. I tell you, you want to talk about ADHD hyperfocus. Got absolutely locked in there during the week. I was trying to figure out a new smart heating system for the gaff, right? Spent about 5 hours in what felt like a single breath trying to figure out. I was texting Terry all day. We're going to get these new knobs for radiators, right? These radiator knobs, they're going to automatically adjust. They're going to turn based on the temperature that it picks up in the room. and we can control it by our phone. She's like, whatever. Shut up. So I was like, all right. And then I was sending her more updates about it, right? Because we were looking at just getting some new knobs for the radiator because the knobs just don't work. I've never seen a radiator knob that works, ever, right? You're twisting it, it's never working. And then it just pops off, and then you end up having to get a fucking wrench. These stupid little cheap How can you sell me something that you know is going to get hot and it's going to melt and you're never going to be able to fucking turn it? You know, have you ever been in a room where it's absolutely scorching and you can't turn a radiator off and you're probably hungover and you're in your ma's gaff because you're back for Christmas and all you can taste on your breath is a fucking 4-in-1 and 90 Guinness? You know that feeling? And all you want is water and for the heat to go away. So these knobs were pissing me off because I couldn't turn them. You know, and then they're all behind the couch and you're moving the couch and you can't fucking move the knobs. So I was like, all right, we're going to get some new knobs, Terry. We're going to get some new knobs that auto-adjust based on the temperature of the room. And it's going to be set up to an overall hub. And we're going to be able to control the temperature in each room. If there's no kid in the room, boom, heating's gone. We'll be able to just give it a little blast of heat, take the chill out of the air, because luckily we've quite a well-insulated house anyway. You know, it's not that cold, but sometimes a little bit of a blast, get rid of the damp, you know. So I started looking up these knobs for fucking 5 hours. And I had them all. This was during Amazon had like a sale. And I had all this shit in my basket. It was like 50% off. And I was laughing all the way to the bank. I was like, Bezos is going to be fucking bankrupt after I buy these 4 knobs, right? For half price. And then I realized it's wrong knobs. They don't fucking work. They don't work. Called some guy, and I don't even know who you call. At first, I called an electrician about my radiator. And he's like, that wouldn't really be my remit, bro. I'm like, why not? There's a thing. I don't even know how to work the console. It's underneath there's 2 boilers. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on in my heat. And it's almost like I've been pranced out on display for the entertainment of my wife so she can laugh at what a man I am not because I don't understand what's going on. I want her to tell me what's going on with the heat. I don't know what's going on with the heat. I've never been able to even turn a fucking radiator knob. And I'm somehow, she's like, oh, you figure out how to get the heat on? I'm like, because I know everything else in the kind of figure it out tech kind of sphere is my remit, but I know nothing about heat, right? Apart from the Michael Mann film, which is amazing. So I don't know anything about the heat. So I called an electrician and he's like, why are you calling me about it? What are you talking about? And I'm like, well, we're looking to get some new smart knobs for the radiators. And I'm like, that'd be some heating guy. Then I look up heating and then it's like, the first thing I get is like plumbers. And I'm like, well, I don't know if it's plumbers. So then I call my plumber and he's like, that wouldn't really be my remit, bro. I'm like, what, is there a heating guy? Is there a new heating guy? And why wasn't that one of the jobs on the Fisher Price phone, right? You had cop, you had doctor, you had construction worker, right? You have all the village people there, right? And then, you know, you'd have plumber, an electrician, a spark, as they're colloquially known, right? And builder. Is there a radiator guy now? So then I called a radiator guy and I said, can I get these smart knobs? And he's like, what knobs do you have now? And I'm like, shit ones. And he goes, well, then no. He's like, there's thermostat knobs, and these are smart thermostat knobs, but they only replace existing thermostat knobs that turn off when they reach a certain temperature in that. And I'm like, and I was like, well, how much would it be to swap them out for 7 radiators? He said €700. I'm like, €700 before I even have the kit, just to get new knobs, to get even newer knobs. I was even very close to just trying to make it all myself, to just replace it all myself. But I've learned since almost blowing up the house with propane gas and drilling into something that turned off the lights. Who's to say whether it was a wire or not? I need to be a little bit more, you know, it's like beforehand when I lived in my like a flat with the lads, you know, if someone just came home after a night out and they'd stolen like a traffic cone, you know, and then they were like, well, we light it on fire in the sitting room, I probably would have been like, okay, you know, here I just found this amazing steel drum. How about we light a fire in it? I'd be like, amazing. Can't do that shit now because now I know what the reality is. That steel drum's going to end up there in the fucking back garden for months, right? But also it might burn the whole house down. See, when you have your own gaff, you know, you're less keen on blowing it up. You know, beforehand, even when it was my ma's gaff, you know, I would take a saw out sometimes. I took a saw out one time and just sawed the arm off a chair. And then I was like, oh shit, I shouldn't have done that. And I sellotaped it back on. My mom was like, what happened to the chair? I'm like, I don't know. How frustrating must that be for a mother? I don't know. What are you doing? Of course you know. Of course you know. You sawed the arm off an armchair and you sellotaped it back on. That's two things someone did. And you're saying you don't know. You've been the only person here. It's like when I was sitting on the door to the press. I was sitting on the door to the press and my brother was swinging it back and forth. I was riding it like a cowboy. I had a cowboy hat and everything. I was waving it in the air. I was actually kind of doing an homage to Dr. Strangelove without even realising it when I was like 8. And then the door fell off the hinges and I called my ma and I was like, here, the door fell off the hinges. She was in work in Arnott's. Called Arnott's, said, hey, can I speak to Carla, please? It's her son. Hi, son, what's going on? Everything okay? Yeah, the door fell off the press. How? Don't know. And then my ma came back late and I think we pretended to be asleep or something, even though we probably got straight back up as soon as she went to bed. And the next morning she said, here, look, I know you probably broke the press door, okay? But it's okay. It's fine. I fixed it. And then years later she said, do you know what it was? I was like, why weren't you angry about that? She goes, because I saw that when I came in that there was sellotape and blue tack, and I tried to fix everything. I tried to fix it with sellotape and blue tack, and screws and a screwdriver. And I knew that, you tried hard to fix it, and I was like, all right. But I actually do remember telling my brother, all right, leave a load of fucking shit around here so she thinks we tried to fix it. Leave the blue tack around so it looks like we tried to fix it. Remember saying that? Like, I'm such a good liar. Anyway, look, thanks very much for listening to this pod. I wish the very best to the rotting corpse of Will Smith's career. I wish you the very best. Next week, I will have turned 36. So on this Friday's Patreon pod, I will be giving you 36 things that I've learned in my 36 years, 36 new things that I've learned. So if you're interested in hearing that, my life lessons as me, a professional self-obsessed guru, you can check it out there. Thanks very much for listening to this pod. All the best. I love you. Bye-bye.